In a small village, surrounded by green fields and rolling hills, there lived a farmer named Jacob Miller. Jacob was not rich. He did not own the biggest farm. He did not have the newest tractor. His house was old. His clothes were simple. And yet, everyone in the village knew his name. Not because he was wealthy, not because he was famous, but because he never complained. No matter what happened, Jacob always seemed calm. If it rained too much, he smiled. If it didn't rain enough, he smiled. If prices went down, he smiled. If prices went up, he smiled. People couldn't understand him. One morning, Jacob was repairing a fence when his neighbor, Frank, walked over. Frank was known for complaining about almost everything. "Good morning, Jacob," Frank said. "Morning, Frank." Frank pointed at the cloudy sky. "Looks like another storm is coming." Jacob nodded. "It might." Frank shook his head. "That's terrible news." Jacob smiled. "Maybe." Frank looked confused. "What do you mean, maybe?" "If the storm comes, the crops may get water. And if it doesn't come, we'll find another way." Frank sighed. "You always say things like that." Jacob laughed softly. "I suppose I do." That evening, a powerful storm hit the village. Strong winds shook the houses. Heavy rain flooded several fields. The next morning, many farmers rushed outside to inspect the damage. Frank was furious. "My crops are ruined." Another farmer shouted, "This is the worst storm in years." Everyone seemed angry. Everyone except Jacob. He quietly walked through his fields. Some crops were damaged. Some fences had fallen. But instead of complaining, he started working. As he repaired the damage, several villagers stared at him. One young boy finally asked, "Mr. Miller, aren't you upset?" Jacob smiled. "Of course I am." The boy looked surprised. "You are?" "Yes, but being upset won't fix the fence." The boy thought about that. Jacob handed him a hammer. "Would you like to help?" The boy smiled. Soon, several other children joined them. By the end of the day, the fence was repaired. As the sun began to set, Jacob sat on his porch. His granddaughter, Emily, sat beside him. She was 10 years old and asked more questions than anyone else in the village. "Grandpa?" "Yes?" "Why don't you complain like everyone else?" Jacob looked toward the fields. Then he smiled. "Would you like to hear a story?" Emily nodded eagerly. "When I was young, I complained about everything." "You did?" "Oh, yes. If it rained, I complained. If it was sunny, I complained. If I had work, I complained. If I had no work, I complained." Emily laughed. "What changed?" Jacob's smile faded slightly. "A lesson." "What kind of lesson?" "The kind that changed my life." Emily moved closer. "Tell me." Jacob looked across the fields as the evening sun painted the sky orange. It happened many years ago. Before he could continue, a truck suddenly appeared at the end of the road. It was moving fast. too fast. The truck swerved, then crashed directly into Jacob's barn. The sound echoed across the entire village. Emily gasped. Neighbors ran toward the farm. Dust filled the air. Part of the barn had collapsed. Several villagers immediately began shouting, "What terrible luck! This is a disaster!" Frank shook his head. Now let's see if Jacob can still smile. Everyone turned toward the old farmer. The barn was badly damaged. Years of hard work seemed ruined in a single moment. Jacob stared at the wreckage, then calmly took off his hat and said only 4 words. "Let's see what happens." The villagers looked at each other. Had he finally lost his mind? Or did he know something they didn't? No one could have imagined that this accident would begin a chain of events that would change the entire village forever. The summer became hotter every day. The little rain that had fallen in the spring was now only a memory. The ground was dry and hard. Many farmers stood in their fields, shaking their heads. "This year is a disaster," one man said. "We've lost everything," another replied. Everywhere Samuel went, he heard people complaining. Some blamed the weather, some blamed the government, others simply blamed their bad luck. But Samuel said very little. Every morning, before the sun rose, he walked to his field. He carried 2 buckets of water from a small stream nearly a mile away. The walk was long. The buckets were heavy. By the time he reached his crops, his shoulders were sore. Still, he smiled. He watered the weakest plants first. "Take care of what you still have," he whispered. His daughter, Emma, watched him one morning. "Father," she asked, "why don't you complain like everyone else?" Samuel smiled. "Because complaining doesn't make the buckets lighter." Emma laughed. "No, it doesn't make the walk shorter." She smiled again. "No, and it certainly doesn't make the crops grow." Emma thought about his words. "So what should we do instead?" Samuel looked across the field. "We do what we can, and we trust tomorrow with what we cannot." Those words stayed with Emma. A few days later, dark clouds filled the sky. The villagers looked up with hope. "Finally!" someone shouted. "Rain!" Children ran outside. Farmers smiled for the first time in weeks. Then the wind began to blow. It grew stronger and stronger. Within minutes, the gentle rain became a violent storm. The wind bent the trees. Branches snapped. Roofs shook. Heavy rain flooded the roads. Samuel and Emma hurried into their small house. They listened as the storm roared outside. It lasted all night. The next morning, the village looked completely different. Several fences had fallen. Trees blocked the roads. Many fields had been destroyed. Farmers stood silently, looking at the damage. One man fell to his knees. "My crops are gone." Another covered his face with his hands. "I don't know how my family will survive." Samuel walked slowly through his own field. Many of his vegetables had been damaged. Several rows were completely underwater. Emma looked at him with worried eyes. "Father?" "This is worse than the drought," Samuel nodded quietly. Then he picked up a shovel. Emma looked surprised. Aren't you upset?" "I am." "Then why are you working already?" Samuel smiled gently. "Because the sooner I begin, the sooner my field can begin to recover." Without another word, he started clearing the broken branches. Emma picked up another shovel. Together, they worked from sunrise until sunset. The next day, something unexpected happened. Their neighbor, Mr. Harris, walked over. He looked embarrassed. "Samuel?" "Yes?" "I've spent 2 days complaining. You've spent 2 days working." Samuel smiled. Mr. Harris looked at the damaged field. "Would you mind showing me where to start?" Samuel handed him a shovel. "Of course." Before long, another neighbor joined them. Then another. Soon, 6 families were working together. Nobody had planned it. Nobody had asked for money. They simply saw one man who refused to give up, and they wanted to help. For 3 days, the villagers worked side by side. When Samuel's field was finished, everyone moved to the next farm. Then the next, then another. The village slowly came back to life. One evening, as everyone rested under a large oak tree, Mr. Harris spoke. "Samuel, I've known you for 20 years. I've never heard you complain." Samuel smiled. "I have difficult days. I feel tired. I feel disappointed. I'm human." "Then how do you stay so calm?" another farmer asked. Samuel looked at the sunset. "My father taught me something when I was a boy." "What was it?" "He said, you can spend your energy complaining about the darkness, or you can use that same energy to light a candle." The farmers became quiet. No one spoke for several moments. Finally, Emma smiled proudly. She realized that her father wasn't strong because he never had problems. He was strong because he never allowed problems to control his heart. As harvest season approached, everyone hoped the remaining crops would be enough. But one morning, Samuel noticed something strange. Several of his healthiest vegetables had disappeared. At first, he thought it was an animal. The next morning, even more vegetables were gone. Then, another night, half of one row had been harvested by someone else. Emma looked frightened. "Father, someone is stealing from us." Samuel looked across the quiet field. He didn't know who was taking the vegetables, but he knew one thing. The next decision he made would affect the entire village. That evening, Samuel could not sleep. Someone had been taking vegetables from his field. His family did not have much. Every carrot, every potato, and every tomato mattered. Emma looked at her father. Should we tell the police? Samuel thought for a moment. Not yet. Don't you want to catch the thief? I do. But first, I want to understand why. The next evening, Samuel had an idea. Instead of hiding inside his house, he quietly sat behind an old apple tree at the edge of his field. The moon was bright. The night was peaceful. For nearly 2 hours, nothing happened. Then, he heard soft footsteps. A small figure slowly walked into the field. The person looked around carefully before picking a few vegetables. Samuel stood up and walked forward. The figure became frightened. The basket fell to the ground. Vegetables rolled across the dirt. "I'm sorry," a young voice cried. "Please don't call the police." Samuel looked closer. It was a boy. He looked about 12 years old. His clothes were old and worn. His shoes had holes in them. The boy's hands were shaking. "What is your name?" Samuel asked gently. "Jacob." "Jacob, why are you stealing from my field?" The boy lowered his head. "My mother is sick. My father died last winter. We don't have enough food. I tried to find work, but no one would hire me." Tears rolled down his face. "I know stealing is wrong, but my little sister hasn't eaten since yesterday." Samuel looked into the boy's eyes. He did not see a criminal. He saw a frightened child. Emma had quietly followed her father to the field. When she heard Jacob's story, tears filled her eyes. Samuel bent down and picked up the basket. He carefully placed the vegetables back inside. Then he surprised the boy. He added even more vegetables. Jacob stared at him. Aren't you angry?" Samuel smiled. "I'm sad. But not because you took my vegetables. I'm sad because you believed you had no one to ask for help." Jacob could hardly speak. Samuel placed a hand on his shoulder. "Next time, knock on my door. You never need to steal from me." The boy burst into tears. "I promise." The next morning, Samuel visited Jacob's small house. His mother was lying in bed. She looked weak. Samuel brought vegetables, bread, milk, and medicine. The woman tried to thank him, but she was too emotional to speak. Word spread quickly through the village. People learned about Jacob's family. One by one, the villagers began to help. Mr. Harris repaired their broken fence. The baker delivered fresh bread every morning. The doctor visited Jacob's mother without asking for payment. The carpenter fixed their leaking roof. Soon, the little house was filled with hope instead of fear. Several weeks later, Jacob's mother became stronger. She was finally able to return to work. Jacob also started helping Samuel on the farm after school. He worked hard every day. He never complained. One afternoon, while they planted new seeds together, Jacob asked, "Mr. Samuel?" "Yes?" "Why did you forgive me?" Samuel smiled as he placed another seed into the ground. "Because someone once forgave me." Jacob looked surprised. "You?" Samuel nodded. "When I was a young man, I made mistakes too. I wasn't perfect. But an older farmer showed me kindness instead of anger. He told me something I'll never forget." "What did he say?" Samuel looked across the field. He said, "People grow best in the soil of kindness." Jacob smiled. "I think I understand." Years passed. Jacob became one of the hardest working farmers in the village. He helped families during difficult seasons. Whenever someone lost hope, Jacob was always the first to offer help. One day, a young traveler stopped by the village. He noticed something unusual. Everyone worked together. No one argued. Neighbors shared tools. Families shared food. Children laughed together. The traveler asked an old villager, "Why is this village so different?" The old man smiled and pointed towards Samuel's farm. It all started with one man, a man who chose kindness when he had every reason to be angry. Many years later, Samuel grew old. His hair turned white. His hands became slower. One evening, the villagers gathered to celebrate his birthday. Jacob stood before everyone with a smile. "I want to tell you all something. When I was 12 years old, I came to Samuel's field to steal." The crowd became quiet. I thought he would punish me. Instead, he fed my family. He gave me work. He gave me hope. Most importantly, he taught me that one act of kindness can change a person's entire life. Jacob looked at Samuel. Everything I have today began because one farmer chose compassion instead of revenge. Everyone applauded. Samuel stood slowly. He looked at the people around him. His neighbors, his friends, the children who had grown into adults. He smiled and said, "I never had the biggest farm. I never had the most money. But I have lived a rich life. Because every seed of kindness we plant will one day grow into something far greater than we can imagine." As the sun set behind the fields, Emma looked at her father. "Father, you always said that complaining never solves anything." Samuel smiled. "That's true. But do you know what does?" Emma shook her head. "Gratitude, hard work, and a heart that is always ready to help someone else." That evening, the village shared a simple meal together. There was laughter. There were stories. There was peace. Samuel looked across the fields one last time. The harvest had been good, but the vegetables were not his greatest success. The people were. Thank you for listening. If this story inspired you, please like this video, share it with someone who could use a little encouragement, and subscribe to Fluent English Hub for more original English stories with meaningful life lessons. And always remember, complaining may describe the problem, but kindness, gratitude, and action are what change the future.